My fellow Americans, I have a question for you. If you could stand in front of Congress and talk to them, what would you say to Congress? If you had an opportunity to stand in front of Congress and ask them or tell them anything on your mind, what would you say? That's my question. What would you tell Congress? If you could talk to Congress or stand up in front of all America, what would you say? That's my question. Here's my idea. First of all, I get so sick and tired of hearing the black and white, the Mexican, the Italian, whatever. I've had my DNA tested. Guess what? I'm 3% African. I'm also Asian. I'm also a little bit of everything. I'm Scottish. I have a little bit of everything. So I can say I'm African. I can say I'm Asian. I can say everything. And I guarantee you, there's nobody in the world that can claim they're one thing. We are all a melting pot of all of us. You know, after the hurricane that hit Houston, I didn't see anybody stopping everybody and saying, hey, what race are you? You can't help me because you're a certain color or you're a certain religion. All I saw was people helping people. It's amazing in crisis times, nobody's worried about who is who. You know, I guarantee you there were criminals, there were people that made hundreds of thousands of dollars. There were poor people, rich people, and they were all helping each other, and nobody cared during that time. But soon as the crisis is over, all of a sudden, now we have a distinction of classes for some reason. Soon as we don't need each other in a crisis, now all of a sudden, we have these classifications of one kind or another. And I think it's just kind of sad that it takes a crisis to pull everybody together. Oops, I can't put my hand there to hold this silly thing. It's getting heavy. Anyway, that's not what I really want to say. That's just kind of what I feel sometimes. The next thing that I want to say to Congress is, we need to learn some basic human things that are never taught in schools. This political correctness is BS. And let me tell you why I'm saying that. I don't want to have to sit here and edit what's in my head 24/7 and worry about somebody else's feelings. First of all, you need to understand how the human mind works. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. You have a thought. Thoughts generate feelings, and feelings generate actions. The truth is, nobody can make you mad. The only person that can make you mad is you. Nobody can actually make you mad. No, you don't get mad by what someone else says. You're mad because of the self-talk that is in your head. Everybody has self-talk. We talk to ourselves 24/7. You can't help it. It's part of the way the brain works. So when you hear what someone else is saying about you, it's your own thoughts that are in your head that is actually making you mad, not what someone else is saying. It's your thoughts that are actually making you mad. Nobody can make you mad. We need to teach this to our kids, that it is our own interpretation of what someone else says. We need to learn that when someone says something bad about us or whatever, it's not what they said that's making us upset. It's the thoughts that's in our own head that's actually making us mad. See, because our thoughts trigger feelings, and then feelings generate actions. If we were to learn this, the way our brains actually work, then we could control our own selves and not pay so much attention. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt when someone says bad things about us, but we need to learn the fact that it wasn't what the other person said, it's how we thought about what they said that really made the difference. Remember, all events in the world are totally neutral. It's only when we give it weight does it make a difference. All events are neutral in the world. We all have a belief system of one way or another. We, as individuals, give things weights. Now, there's also social weights and natural weights of things, but the universe is neutral. It's only when we give it weights does it make a difference. And that's kind of hard for some people to understand that logic, but that is the truth. There is no events in this world that has any meaning whatsoever until you give it a value, and everybody has their own values. Now, society makes up these rules also, but the truth is, there is really only values that we give it, and as a society, we govern those rules. But individuals are made up of those values, and they change over time what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. But I find it interesting because here's the second truth that most people don't want to admit. Everybody has multiple hats they wear. You have a hat when you're around your parents because you act different when you're around your parents than you do when you're around your friends. Also, have you ever had a phone call from an important person and you notice how you sit up straighter or you act different on the phone, like when it's your boss or when it's someone else than it is when it's your friends? That's because you have different rules when you talk to different people. You talk more respectful to a priest or to a judge than you would to your friends. That's just how it is. We have different hats. We talk to different people at different times. The next thing I want to see, these are things that should have been taught to us a long time ago. The cycle of thought. Thoughts generate feelings. Feelings generate actions. And it's a cycle. It continues going around. And we have thousands of thoughts every day. If you were to understand this principle that our thoughts governs our feelings, so if you have bad feelings, well, we know now how to change that. You got to change your thoughts. Most people need a checkup from the head up before they start anything. A lot of people want to lose weight. They probably start at the wrong place. They go to the gym. Well, the gym is a good place, but you really need to do a checkup from the neck up because the gym is the second place you need to go. You need to get your head on straight first, because if you don't have the right mindset, no matter what you do at the gym, it's not going to work. If you're going to the gym, but you're still eating 5 cheeseburgers every day, I don't think the gym's going to do you any good. Or if you're picking up, a Slurpee every time you go to the gym, I don't think the gym's going to work. Because you're probably going to the gym for a different reason than losing weight. People try to do, they play mind games with themselves all the time. They tell themselves they're doing one thing for one reason, but they're really doing it for a different reason. So that's the second thing that I wanted to say is people need to learn how the mind works. And then once you learn how the mind works, then you can deal with the rest of it. Dieting is a simple formula, everybody. We know that if you eat 10,000 calories, guess what? You're going to gain weight. If you want to lose weight, eat less calories. Everybody knows that. So why do we treat it like it's a big secret or like I need to figure out how to lose weight? It's simple. Eat less calories, you're going to lose weight. I mean, it's simple. Why do we make it a billion-dollar industry for these fat cats out there who owns all this diet stuff and everything when we all know the truth? It's written out there. Everybody knows it. We just have to understand it. Now, the next thing, back to my political correctness. The problem with political correctness is if I have to worry about what I'm thinking all the time and I have to edit that, then I lose my train of thought most of the time. And that's why I don't like all this political correctness. The second thing, the hate laws. The problem I have with hate laws is is hate is an emotion. And the government tells me that I can't hate someone is taking one of my emotions away. If I want to hate someone, then I have the right to hate them. Now, that does not give me the right to go beat up on them, to torture them, or to do things that are hateful towards them. But to tell me that I can't hate someone, as far as I'm concerned, taking a constitutional right from me. I can hate anybody that I want. And I should be able to, when I was a kid, I could stand on the corner and I could yell, "I hate you." You can't do that today. And I think that's wrong. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I think they've gone just a little bit too far in our laws on this, because hate is an emotion. And emotions are part of who we are. We're emotional beings. We have feelings, and feelings are generated by feelings. Or we're feeling police now, because we've already taken away the hate feeling. What feeling are they going to take away next? Love? We can't love someone next? I don't know. Okay, moving on. Congress, I thought when President Trump, or before President Trump, when President Trump came in, the Republican Party had the House and the Senate, and we all were, yay, we got all the Republicans in, that y'all guys were going to do something. I was mistaken. Y'all guys have acted like romper room. Y'all have got nothing done. For the first year in office, all y'all have done is play like kindergartners. What have y'all guys accomplished this last year? All y'all have done is bicker and acted worse than first graders. I want that to sink in. I want people to think about this. Y'all guys act like first graders. All y'all do is bicker. That's all I hear out of the news every day, is that Congress is acting like a bunch of first graders. The House is no better. My government is not exactly embarrassing me. Now, a lot of people are being critical of President Trump. I have a few words for that. When the Charlotte incident happened, people were mad at President Trump because he said that there was good people on both sides of the aisle. I bet you anything people have forgotten that President Trump is everybody's president. He's your president. He's also the president of the people on the other aisle, the people that you opposed. He's also the KKK's president. He is the white supremacist president. He's your president. He's everybody's president. For him to say anything other than that would have ostracized everybody. Remember when I was talking about the hurricane a while ago? I guarantee you, if we were to go to Charlottesville and to reenact that scene, if we were to take purple paint and paint everybody that was there with purple paint, and then had everybody blindfolded, and then everybody turn around 100 times, and then take off the blindfolds, you couldn't tell me who was on whose side. And I bet you there was doctors, lawyers, janitors. I bet you there was every profession, teachers, on both sides of the party. So I bet you there were good people on both sides of the line. And I think that's what President Trump was trying to say, was that both sides of the argument had people that were good. I mean, they're not just made up of thugs on both sides. I don't think he was trying to say that when you're president and you're representing the whole country, it's hard to say, well, that group of people are just worthless, because that group of people may be made up of doctors and lawyers and other people. And you're wanting him to say, well, that whole group of people are just bad because of a few members of their party or of their makeup or who they're there. Now I have somewhat to say about the statues. Now I'm a Texan. I was raised in Dallas, Texas. I'm from Marshall, Texas, which is predominantly black. I was raised around blacks all my life. I lived in Oak Cliff and DeSoto, Texas, which DeSoto was dominantly white, but it grew with a lot of blacks. I was raised around a lot of blacks. I know a lot of blacks. And we never had any problem with historical statues until here recently. My point of view is it's history. You can't erase history. And even if you take the statues down, it doesn't erase history. If you have a problem with history, I think you need to look at your own thoughts behind that. Why do you have a problem with history? And if it reminds you of history, then that should be a good thing. Don't you want to have reminders of what happened so that they don't be repeated? And if they are if we're celebrating them in a wrong way, then maybe we need to put up, so if we have like a general of a Confederate, then maybe what we need to do is let's put up a slave hero next to it. Let's put up some statues of the opposite beside it. Let's don't take those down. Let's put up something to celebrate the opposite next to it. Let's don't take those down, but let's put up something that represents the other side next to it to represent what the slaves went through. Those are historical monuments. They've been there for a long time, and they represent a period of time that I don't think should be destroyed. But I think what we ought to do is make room, and let's put up some historical things that represent what the slaves went through. Let's take that, and now let's make a new period, and let's show, hey, look, from the 80s or from the 90s or whatever, from the 70s to this time, this is what America was like. These statues were here. And now in 2017 or 2018, we're going to add this statue. This is what the American people decided, that from this time on, we need to have this statue up here to show that we now have grown beyond just celebrating the Confederacy or this part. You know, I'm 54 years old, and I remember in Marshall, Texas, when I was a kid, that they still had the signs up in the buildings there that said whites only in places. It's amazing when you think about that. Those signs were still there when I was a kid. I remember them. It's pretty daunting when you think about that. That hadn't been that long ago, people, that those things were still there in our history. And I don't look at it as that I'm white and that I'm superior. I look at it as a reminder of how far we've come and where we need to go, you know, and that it's and blacks drank out of it too. They ignored the signs, and you know they knew that it didn't mean they couldn't drink out of it. I think it was a reminder of how far they've come, and that those signs were a reminder of the bad times. Okay, I'm going to move on. I guess what I'm trying to say is, people, is you can't erase history. History is set in stone. It's there. We have to deal with it. We have to move on. I think we have bigger fish to fry than worrying about what statues are up, in my personal opinion. Okay, now back to Congress. I'm kind of diverting here. What would I say to Congress? Here's what I'd like to say to Congress. I've kind of diverted on some how the mind works and a few other things. Here's my actual speech to Congress. I've rehearsed this a couple of times, so here goes. My fellow Americans, dear Congress, this is what I would like to say to you. we appreciate your service to the American people. First of all, we would like you to remind you that you are here representing the American people. You work for us. You are our representatives. You don't represent your pocketbooks. You don't represent your own personal interest. You represent the interest of Americans, all Americans. Not the white ones, not the black ones, not the purple ones, not the yellow ones, not the red ones, but all Americans. And that includes anybody that's inside the borders of America, on American territories. That includes any civilians or people that's in the service that's around the world. That includes all of us. That includes the ones that hadn't been born yet. That includes all Americans. That includes the dreamers, those that have come here from illegal parents or that were brought here. That includes us all. Now, I have some wild ideas. Like I said before, I'm a couch potato politician, but I've thought this over hard and fast. Here's my ideas, first of all. I want to get rid of part of the IRS. I think it's time that we demolish half or 3/4 of the IRS. The great country of Texas, the great state of Texas, has no income tax. They have a flat sales tax that runs the state of Texas. I think the great state of the United States can do the same thing. There are trillions of dollars in sales every year in this country. I think the United States can do the same thing. We will have a flat sales tax of 5% on all goods except for real food. That means like meat of all kinds, cow, pig, chicken, fish will not be taxed. Milk will not be taxed. But candy, processed foods of any kind will be taxed. This will replace our income tax. Now, business taxes will continue, but personal income tax will be dissolved. This will level the playing field, Congress, because there will be no rich, there will be no poor. Everybody will pay this 5%. If President Trump gets a Big Mac or gets a Slurpee, he pays taxes now. All the rich, if Bill Gates gets up in the middle of the night and goes to Jack in the Box and gets him a sandwich, guess what? He just paid taxes. If a couple from Germany comes over and goes to Disneyland, guess what? They just pay taxes. Every tourist that comes to America pays taxes now. Everybody that gets to this country that buys anything will pay taxes. All tourists now pay taxes. Everybody that comes to this country, legal or illegal, will pay taxes. Everybody will pay a flat 5% tax on goods. That means there's no rich, there's no poor. It's a level playing field. Now, I have a couple caveats that I want to change compared to the Texas system. I think alcohol, tobacco should be at 15%. If you want to waste your money on these goods, which are unhealthy to begin with, then you can pay a little more taxes for these goods. They're bad for you anyway, so I think tobacco, alcohol should be at 15%. Now I have another caveat. Any form of gambling, lotto tickets, casinos, and bingo, any other form of gambling should be at 20%. So again, all these revenue streams will replace our income tax. That will be more income tax than the current tax system. I looked up the other day how many trillions of dollars that are coming in. I could not get an actual figure, but I looked it up and it was, I got somewhere close to $100 and something billion. So it was more than our current tax was bringing in with the numbers that I could come up with. And it was actually 2% higher than our current taxes bringing in. And with my caveat, with the tobacco and the other, it made it even more. Now look at this, Congress. If you look at how much the salaries of the IRS agents, plus look at the computer power it takes to store all this IRS information, look at the paper that the IRS uses, look at the offices, look at the resources. The IRS for the personal income tax is 2/3 of the government. This will save the government, and not even counting the lawsuits and all the other resources of the IRS, this puts a huge dent into the finances of the government. This will reduce the cost of the government. Puts a few people out of work, but that's okay because I got a plan to put them back to work. And yes, I know this is a drastic change, but this is the one hell of a good idea. My phase 2. Now this one here, listen to the whole plan before you kill over here. I'm 54 years old, and I have done nothing but heard my whole life the war on drugs. I'm tired of hearing this war on drugs. I watched a couple of science shows here a couple weeks ago, or maybe it's been a month ago now, that showed that in Colombia, these drug dealers are making submarines. The first ones were pretty crude. They were no more than a small hull with a diesel engine. But the newer ones are full-blown submarines that can make more than one trip. The first ones were a simple one-trip boat that could be undetected. The newer ones are more sophisticated, but they're getting drugs into the United States this way, and it's costing our government millions of dollars to detect these things. And the Coast Guard and the armed forces are having to spend a lot of time searching for these things and finding them because they're bringing more and more drugs in this way. And again, all our Coast Guard and our police departments are spending millions of dollars all over the United States trying to fight this war on drugs. I don't know how many people have heard this, but in Colorado, where they legalized pot here recently, there was a study that came out late last year that said that teenage pot use is down 80% because the teenagers can't get pot because there's no dope dealers anymore. And so that's why the teenage pot use is down, because the pot dealers have grown up. The drug dealers are going away because since it's legalized there, it's dried up. Because everybody can just buy it legally, and it's cheaper than going to your dope dealer because you can just get it legally there. Here's my idea, people. I know this is crazy, but what I suggest we do is we legalize drugs. We legalize cocaine. We legalize marijuana. Let the government deal with it. And here's what I want to do. I think we ought to legalize it across the United States, and it'll be like a license. You have to go get a license to do drugs. And remember those IRS agents that we put out of work? This is how we're going to put them back to work. They will be drug dealers. They'll be drug licensors. And you have to go to a 6-hour class or something in order to get your license. Now, here's going to be how this will work, the way I see it would work. Not only do you get a license to do drugs, but the government will have to issue permits for growers. They'll have to permit somebody like pharmaceuticals to make these drugs. So again, and people to grow some of these things, like you got to grow opiums and all to make the opioids. So in other words, the government's going to make even more money here again, another revenue source for the government. And then there could even be like hotels or facilities where people could go to do their drugs, and you'd want to have a nursing facility or some kind of trauma center, maybe even on the site. So again, more jobs we could put in place here so people could safely do their drugs. If people want to do drugs, I say, let's let them do drugs. People want to work, we'll let those people do work. And here's what I see happening. When you buy your drugs, since you have a drug card, it'll automatically alert your work that you have bought in drugs because you're a drug card carrying person, and you can't go back to work for 72 hours. That's the way to work. You want to do drugs? Fine, we'll let you do drugs. It's flagged your job that you bought drugs, and you're just not allowed to go back to work for 72 hours. And then part of those IRS agents that were fired, they will be part of a drug squad. And they'll just show up because you're a drug card carrying person. They'll just show up at your work one day with a little cup saying, oh, got to do a P test. Make sure that you didn't come back to work before your 72 hours. And just do a random drug test. They'll just drive around and hit businesses up where you're at, and your boss will know that you didn't come to work for 72 hours because, everything's in computers today, so it wouldn't be very hard to create a database to do this. And so you just buy your drugs and you just can't go back to work for 72 hours. And those people that don't want to do drugs and want to work, you'll get all the jobs. And those that do want to do drugs, they can just go do drugs and just be happy. And they can, like I said, the government can set up these entertainment centers where you can do drugs, and it'll be another revenue stream for the government, and here we'll make more money. I know it's a wild idea, but it's better than what we have now, because now people do drugs in back alleys and in these drug houses where they're unsafe and unsanitary, and we don't know where they're at a lot of times. They get busted, and then people just go rampage. And they're filthy and all this. This would be a cleaner way of doing it. People that want to do drugs, they get to do drugs. And then every year, you have to renew your license for $300, and you have to go back to drug class once again. And hopefully those that will choose not to do drugs after seeing the 6 hours of video or whatever of people puking up and dying, that kind of stuff. Anyway, all right, my last idea. Trump wants to build the wall, and he wants Mexico to pay for it. I have an idea of how to do that also. People, I'm not heartless, but look, people that work here in America and then send their money to Mexico. Now, I hope my terminology is correct here, and I hope I'm using these words correct, but I'm dyslexic, and so, I get my words backwards and upside down and right side up sometimes, but that's okay. I hope I'm using these words correctly. But people that spend their money in Mexico and not here are stimulating Mexicans' economy and not American economy. So what I want to do is, anybody that wires money to Mexico, I think we ought to charge them 10% tax. So anybody that sends money to Mexico, I want to charge them a 10% non-American stimulus tax. Because you're not stimulating our economy. So I want to charge you 10% of your money because you're making money here and you're sending it to Mexico.